Afternoon, all councillors and staff, and welcome to our Zoom meeting for May. I'll officially open the meeting 4:32. We have no visitors in the house, and staff and people present in the chambers know where the exit procedure is. We have no one speaking in the public forum arena. So now I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we meet on this afternoon and pay my respects to their elders, the Wiradjuri people and their elders past, present and emerging. While we are Zooming, the meeting is still being live streamed and recorded and published in line with council procedure. So to those in the gallery or by attending the meeting or by speaking at the meeting, your image, voice and comments are recorded and published. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. The chair and or the general manager have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such directions will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Item number 4 is calling for any apologies. I don't believe we have any apologies. All councillors are in attendance. Could we just please, the people in the chambers, be upstanding and have a moment's silence while we do the expressions of sympathy, please. In respect of Anna Byrne, William Spackman, Jamie Gordon, George Snow, Una Holmes, David Pye, David Howell, Frank Thornhill, Marcia Sains, Winifred Carter, Gregory John Gregory, Sarah Bunt, Jack Forbutt, Margaret Glover, Joyce Powell, Thelma Blundell, William Close, Douglas Wright, Joan Hine, Stephen Lander, Audrey Freudenstein, Thora Martin, Freda McAllister. Thank you all. Just before I do go any further, I'd just like to apologise to everyone if my voice is I'm struggling at the moment. Maybe I've been talking a bit too much. My voice has gone a bit croaky on me. But I'm pretty sure I'll get the message across if we need be. The next item on the agenda is the confirmation of the minutes held in April 2020. Have a mover and seconder for those. Moved Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you. Everyone in favour of that, please raise your right hand or hand. So unanimous, I presume? Unanimous, thank you, councillors. Takes me to item 7. Do we have any disclosures of interest to declare from anyone? That would appear to be a no, thank you. Item 8, councillors, is a mayoral minute, which I have one, which under clause 9.6 of the Code of Meeting Practice comes into play in regard to a matter that has come to light rather quickly, and it is in regard to the $1.8 million that the actually the first lot is the $500 million that the federal government has provided to local government and split up to be spent on suitable projects in the local government area. So Hilltops Council was allocated $1.776 million out of that $500 million to put towards projects that are ready to go. The General Manager contacted me in regard to that finance after Angus Taylor and Michael McCormick's office contacted me into thoughts of what we might do with that available funding. The first thing that came to my mind that I mentioned to the General Manager, which has been a priority for some time now, and as a council we spoke about it, and unfortunately, while we have some of the funding towards the Millvale Road project I'm talking about, we've been unsuccessful with obtaining some matching funding. That funding has been sitting there for quite some time. We don't want to lose the funding we already have, so I suggested that Council might look at putting $1.2 million of that $1.8 million with the $940,000 we have towards the Millvale project and get that piece of work done that's been there, and it's very necessary and it's been wanting to be done for a long time, but we've been financially restrained from being able to do it. So that was a suggestion that I put there, that might be a starting point. And the second point on that Mayoral Minute, staff put in and the balance of funds to be allocated on the document to the Jugiong, perhaps towards the Jugiong Master Plan upgrade works. As I've said to councillors, as I spoke to councillors yesterday and today, that's there, for councillors to talk about. No doubt other councillors have got some ideas about where they might like to see that money go. Happy to discuss that and work around that, where what might happen with that, the balance of $570,000. My main wish or aim would be tonight is to make sure that we can, as a council, tick off the 1.2 for the Millvale Road works that needs to be done, and then we can talk to any suggestions or any other ideas or concepts that councillors might have in regard to any other funding. So okay. That's the Mayoral Minute and the recommendation. So happy for questions to be taken by staff or myself or anyone. Councillor Walker.
You need to unmute.
Unmute. Hang on.
Mr.
Councillor Flannery, just hold on. Councillor Walker came in, but he's not unmuting himself. You have to unmute yourself, John. No, you're not unmuted, John. Councillor. Councillor Walker, you're not unmuted. We can't hear you.
How's that?
Yeah, yes. You are. Yes.
Righto. Okay, thank you. I have a question about Millvale Road. Could you please clarify what section that is?
Mr. Crisp? Yeah, it's that. Which section the Millvale Road is to be allocated, these fundings? I think it's the whole project I think you need to discuss.
Through the Mayor, if I may, the section we're looking at is from Penrose Bridge through to Chillingworks Road.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose that the balance of the funds go to Murrumbula Creek. I acknowledge that there's a strong urge to get some works underway at Jugiong, but we have a unfinished project at Murrumbara for the Murrumbula Creek project, and I think given our history of having grant money soaked up by consultancy fees in the initial stages, it would be better if we finished some of our existing projects, and I think if we can get Murrumbula Creek ticked off, or if we were to allocate the balance of the funds to it, it won't quite finish it, but it would go a long way towards it. We could then focus all our attention on Jugiong once we get some of these other projects up out of the road. But I think we'd be splitting workforces, getting new consultants in, new RFPs. I think we'd lose too much of the money to go and start a new project with it, if I could make that recommendation or suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Thank you. Anyone else like to make comment before we do any? Councillor Rolls. Sorry, Councillor Manchester. Councillor Rolls, you go first. You were there. Unmute.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, while we're considering projects that aren't finished, and Murrumbula Creek, I certainly endorse that as well, but I'd like to consider also Garibaldi Gully that's been put on the back burner, and I'm not sure how much of the funds are needed to finish either project, but I think that's another project that we have to think of that has been underway, and funds have been taken from it for other projects, which is fair enough. But I think also as another entrance to one of the towns in the Hilltops, it's very important that we don't forget Garibaldi Gully as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillor Manchester?
Yeah, it's just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I certainly don't disagree with Millvale Road. It's certainly the worst entrance to the town, to Young, and it's needed something done to it for years. It is a regional road, and I've got concerns about spending federal funds on a regional road. I believe it is a state government responsibility. Now, I know that I did speak to you a while back about contacting the State Roads Minister about further funding to finish the project. Obviously, that that hasn't happened, or what hasn't happened is they haven't funded it. But I'm not saying that you haven't seen him, but certainly we haven't been able to get extra funds from the state government. When does this federal money and the rest of the money that we've got for the regional road has to be spent? And can we use any repair money, regional road repair money? Can we ship any of that around to finish this project on Millvale Road?
I might pass to the General Manager. Happy to speak.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I understand there is not a tight time frame for the allocation of the money. However, I believe it's important to move on it, given that the money is there for us to be able to complete some of these outstanding projects.
I think the question that Councillor Manchester was making is there state government funding that we're allocating to another project that we could put on a Millvale Road and swap this money into, say, a federal project or an otherwise federally funded project? But I guess it achieves the same outcome, but I think that's what, just getting clarification.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was after.
I'll pass to Mr. Crisp in that regard.
Through the Mayor, this project already has secured half the funding or a good portion of the funding from the federal government already, even though it is a regional road under that heavy vehicle safety productivity program. So we already have funding here. We also have precedent of bridges renewal funds already on regional road projects, such as north of Young on a recent bridge work job there. The answer to the question of council regarding repair money, yes, you can utilise repair money, and up until now, we have been allocating repair money as some of our co-funding, just get these things over the line with other grant submissions. So, yes, anything is possible to move repair money around. But I would say that with a little bit of caution. We've got a large network that we're looking after, and the network is screaming for funds to do pavement rehabilitation work. So where you might go into one area, another area is going to drop back. So, but certainly you can still move things around.
Thank you for that. And that was the point that I spoke with the General Manager about. Well, this money is here and ready to go. We start standing back and looking for other options that we've obviously been looking at for some time now, and this has been rejected by the state a number of times already. We'll find ourselves going around in the same circle and circle, where I think it would be very prudent of us to take the advantage of the generosity of the federal government and proceed with that project.
Councillor Wallace have a question.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I support the money going to Millvale Road. I think it's an excellent idea. In relation to the balance, is it correct that the project needs to be a new project and cannot be for the completion of a project that's already commenced?
I'll have to pass to Mr. Crisp again on that.
I believe that's right.
Through the Mayor, unfortunately, I'm going to have to take that one on notice as to whether it's a fresh project or one that's already coming through.
Look, it's certainly in the documentation, it didn't appear to be a fresh project. They just wanted work to be done, as my read, but we will clarify that.
Look, I don't mind. Those other two suggestions are good ones, but if it does need to be something newer, and I know it may not be shovel ready, but I think rather than the Jugiong master plan initially, further work involved in the Jugiong sewerage scheme would be a good idea if it can be spent on that. I don't know if it's allowed to be, but and the other alternative I see of work that isn't funded and in the half-year review is the Barangong Creek rehabilitation. So I think both of those could be options also. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wallace.
Mr Mayor, if I may, I share Councillor Wallace's view that perhaps stopping the sewage from running down the street in Jugiong is more important than the streetscape at this particular stage. And I'd certainly support any movement towards repairing the situation or improving the situation in regards to sewage there. My question, I guess, goes to the proposed works on Millvale Road. Would those works be undertaken by council or by contract? I'm looking at council's operating result for this year and contemplating what sort of result there might be next year. So I guess I'm seeing this as potentially a means of funding some of council's operations, be they capital renewals at this particular stage, for the next 12 months.
Mr Crisp.
Through the Mayor, I'd anticipate that it'd be a mixture of work staff, day labour, and also subcontract works would be brought into that project. I would like to make a comment just regarding Jugiong. We're a fair way out in our planning stages with Jugiong sewerage, and I believe these funds need to be looked at or need to be expended by the end of the next financial year. So I'm not sure whether we're going to fit into that time frame for Jugiong, even though it's an excellent suggestion. There's quite an amount of work to be done in that space, and you're probably looking at a couple of million to roll that project out.
Mr Mayor, just a question. I guess if there is concerns about Jugiong sewage, which I think we all share, as Councillor Armstrong, are you suggesting that perhaps the sewage should take precedence over Millvale Road and any streetscape projects, or are you just referring only to streetscape?
I'm suggesting that the balance of funds may be may provide better value in the long term by improving the sewerage at Jugiong than perhaps the streetscape at this particular stage. I do note that the planning aspect of a sewage treatment works is a very expensive process, and I hearken back to recent days with the former Young Shire Council. There was a $1 million bill simply for design. So, as Mr Crisp said, this is a significant project of millions of dollars. I guess I'd like to see some sort of a design produced, and if we can produce that design on the federal funds, then perhaps that's good business for us and good business for Jugiong.
Councillor Manchester, I think, yep, and then Councillor Horton. Councillor Manchester.
You're still muted.
I've got it now, yeah. Look, I understand that these funds are for shovel-ready projects. The sewage, even though the sewage treatment works at Jugiong needs to be done or should be certainly looked at, this is doing plans and scopes for it is not the sort of work that I would think that the federal government are anticipating for these funds to be used for. I believe that they were meant to be shovel-ready projects that gets workers on the ground using the funds for community benefit.
Yep, I tend to agree with that, Councillor. Councillor Horton, I believe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I believe that our roads are a top priority, good, safe roads, and in particular, main entrance roads going into our largest town. And I think that road should be given precedence over beautifying a creek, as much as I'd like to see Murrumbula Creek finished. But safe roads are top priority, so I'd be in favour of that money being spent on Millvale Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Tuckerman.
Mr Mayor, just with respect, I'm just wondering whether we're going to receive any information on what the grant actually looks like and what our what it has to be spent on and when, and some information around the planning of these projects, and perhaps some idea from staff on what projects are outstanding that might be able to be utilised, so we can make an informed decision rather than on the run through a Merrill minute.
My response to that, Councillor Tuckman, would be that there's significant works could be sent out to you with the application for the works on Millvale Road. That's been worked on for some time now. The information that was forwarded to me from to get a comment from the media release from Angus Taylor's office and Mike McCormick's office, I thought would have been sent to everyone. In regard to any detail to the grant funding, how it was to be spent, the only correspondence I've had was that out of that media release was for shovel-ready projects that would help stimulate local economies and local government. But happy for any information, of course, to be forwarded out to you. The General Manager can forward out or add to my commentary for that to be done. But in regard to the Millvale Road, I believe there's been sufficient information spoken about for a number of years now about the need for it and the design there for it to be done, that we would be well aware of the priority of it. But I understand there's other projects around with other priorities, and there was a starting point to start somewhere, and it would appear that the majority of the council would have seemed to be agreeing that at the moment. But
Mr. Mayor, I totally agree. Millvale Road is a very important project, but I'm just wondering whether we have any costs and where we're up to with the costs for Millvale Road, and whether that amount of money is sufficient. How much is going to be left over? I just feel that I'm not fully informed on what the costs will be. We don't want to see another blowout. Is there sufficient money? Just something so we can make an informed decision.
I'll defer to the General Manager.
Mr. Crisp, I know you have the dollars on Millvale Road at the tip of your tongue, so I'll pass to you.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, Millvale Road at the moment is estimated around $2.4 million. You have around $1.2 million already funded through the heavy vehicle, and we're looking at funding the balance through this program. And that's how we arrive at the 1.5 or 1.2, sorry, for Millvale Road.
My understanding of the funding for Millvale Road was $943,000 or $4,000 initially from the federal government. Council had always allowed for $300,000 to be put with that, with matching fundings. If we take the 1.2 and the 900 puts us very close, and with that $300,000 that was said would be satisfied, it would leave a contingency fund there if it was found to be necessary for that project. So that's my understanding of the financing of it. Councillor Manchester.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. This is going around a bit. I think the consensus is that the Millvale Road should get the funds, and we obviously we haven't got any other source of funds at this stage. But can we just get a report to the next meeting? This wouldn't have to be made, and we certainly won't be doing anything on the job until after June anyhow. So can we get a report back? One on the Dugong Road and two on two or three of the other projects that we could use the balance of the funds on.
Through the General Manager.
Through the Mayor, then with your agreement, I would then recommend that the motion, that the recommendation be changed. The balance, this is B, the balance leaving A the same. There appears to be consensus that is has validity. The balance of the funds being 57968. A report be brought back to council to investigate the 4 proposed projects, being the Murrumburra Creek, the Garibaldi Gully, please correct me if I pronounce any of these incorrectly, the the Jugion sewage system, and that will also include whether or not it's a valid thing with the planning. I defer to the Mayor in that regard. And the Burragon Creek renewal. Councillors, did I miss any project that was mentioned there? Councillor Walker?
Councillor Walker, you have to unmute. Yep.
Yes.
Looks like it's...
You're on. You turned yourself back off, Councillor.
Councillor Walker, you're on now.
I'm on now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Did we miss the Jugion master plan in that?
No, well, I believe there was a consensus that we can leave the Jugion master plan in the mix and what could be achieved for that as part of that report.
Yeah. No, it was. I didn't think it was on that list you just read. That's all.
Oh, no, you're correct.
Councillor Stadmiller.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a question for Mark Crisp, if I can. How many years has the disinfectant of the disinfecting system at the Harden Pool been continually sort of relegated? Because I've noticed that it's happened again this year. I'd like to add that to a possible place within a report.
Through the Mayor, I'll just take that one on notice. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just jump in there? Look, I think it's been, the funds are to be voted back over, is my understanding.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct, Councillor. Because we received the drought money and we're going to do the change rooms as well, we thought it would be better use of the money to all do it in one hit rather than having 2 or 3 RFPs. So we do all the work in one go.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery, and that's correct. That was our understanding, and that's what's going forward, yep. Okay, Councillor, so what we've come to there is I'd like to put that recommendation up with point A standing and point B being amended as the General Manager just read out to everyone. Would anyone like us to read that out for clarification before I put it to a vote, please? Okay, here we go. The recommendation, can we put it up for everyone or we can?
Just the screen's about to go blank for you and you'll see the recommendation come up very shortly.
Could I request that B becomes C and we add in B to B with a report to come back to Council on the full costings of the Millvale Road project, please?
All right. This is information. And you have to agree to it.
Yep. I can't see the points down there. Yep.
We'll be providing it anyway.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Okay, councillors. We got it there. Okay, all good. Now, if I call for a vote now, I can't see everyone. I've only got a couple of councillors on my screen. So what do we do here? Go back?
Yeah, can you please stop sharing?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, councillors, with the recommendation and then changes.
Councillor Stadmiller has a question.
Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, we just had a number of different councillors propose a number of different ideas for the use of the money. I've just proposed, looking at the replacement of the disinfectant system at the Harden Pool, which hasn't been added to that list. On top of that, I've got some reservations about us having to spend this money so quickly. I've just quickly looked at an article there which says, Sydney Morning Herald, 22nd of May, the guidelines for the local road and community infrastructure program will be sent to local governments by the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Communications. Have we actually received that at a council level? And if so, why haven't we all received that as councillors yet?
I'm going to answer that. Mr. Chris, what was the information that we actually received in relation to the detail that Councillor Stadmiller has just requested?
Through the Mayor, we received a notification of our allocation amongst other councils in Australia. And there was also some very loose guidelines, and I believe they're still firming up those guidelines on what likely projects that council could look at. There was a focus towards road. There was a small focus on community-based park-type projects, but they were still working the details out of what projects they would accept.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Stedmiller again, and then Councillor Tuckerman.
Mr. Mayor, can I foreshadow a motion that we defer the allocation of these funds until the next meeting in June?
You can foreshadow a motion to defer to June. Who else had their hand up now?
Councillor Tuckerman.
Councillor Tuckerman?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Deal with that first, or not?
Well, no, it's a foreshadow motion.
Yeah,
The other one doesn't get up.
Okay, councillors, thank you for that. So, having said that, the recommendation is what was put up here, point A and B and C, that I was happy to include. So I'll now call for I'll move mayoral minute.
You don't need a seconder.
Do I need a seconder?
No, you don't.
I don't need a seconder to move it. I've got a seconder there in Councillor Walker anyway. Thank you, Councillor Walker. So, all in favour, please raise your hand. What have we got there now?
Horton, Walker, Wallace, Flannery, Manchester, and yourself.
Numbers are? How many for?
Carried. 1, 2.
Those against? Connor, Tuckerman, Stadmiller, Rolls. That mayoral minute is passed in its a new form. Thank you, councillors.
Just one quick question to Mr. Mayor. As soon as we do know the details of this, what this grant entails, can we get that sent out to councillors? That should have been sent out of it. I certainly get a copy of it, but yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll include that as part of the councillor newsletter. So you'll have that detail once we receive it. That detail.
Thanks, Mr. GM.
Thank you, councillors. Brings me to the mayoral report, which is there for councillors to look at to receive a note. I'm moving to seconder for that. Thank you. Councillor Horton, Councillor O'Connor, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. I come now to councillors' reports, item 2091. The recommendation is that the reports be read and noted. The written ones we have there. Councillors happy to go around, starting with Councillor Horton, who was there. Would you like to add to that, Councillor Horton, or just as you've stated?
Is that Councillor Horton?
Yes.
Yep. My notes are there. There's one amendment to be made, which I'll rectify for the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Connor.
I omitted one, sorry. On the 20th of May, I didn't put in the budget workshop via Zoom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So away I'll go. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the council meetings, the customer service workshop and the budget workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Meetings as minuted.
Thank you. Councillor Tuckerman.
Meetings as minuted. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
The customer service workshop, all meetings via Zoom, of course. The LEP meeting, ARIC meeting, the budget workshop and today's council meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
The budget workshop, Mr. Mayor, and the council meeting.
Thank you. We'll go up to Councillor Rolls. You're still muted, Councillor Rolls.
There you go. Is that better?
You're right.
Yes, okay. The Southern Tablelands Arts AGM on the 12th of the 5th. And the same day, Murrumburra Precinct Plan. And the 15th of the 5th, the financial assistance. And then 19th of the 5th, a field visit to Blantyre Farms. 19th of the 5th, also LEP meeting. Then 25th budget meeting. 21st of the 5th, there was an arts and culture informal meeting. and 22nd of the 5th, a Yulee Road also field visit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stadmiller.
Meetings as minuted.
Thank you. Councillor Manchester.
Meetings as minuted, and including the Finance and Sponsorship meeting on the 30th of the 4th, the Murrumbidgee Precinct meeting on the 12th of the 5th, LEP meeting on the 19th of the 5th, and the quarterly review budget meeting on the 20th of the 5th.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I've collected everyone.
Mr Mayor, could I add in the Weeds meeting too? I think it was the 6th of May. I don't have a date in front of me. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Also, that's for me too, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wallace is included in that as well. Thank you. Okay, so I think I've been around them all. So I'll move that be read and noted. Have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Manchester, thank you. All those in favour? Community recognition scheme. Has anyone got anyone they'd like to? Councillor Walker.
Yeah. Can I congratulate Jane Caldo and James Wall for coordinating a very well organised, community-driven whole of Hilltops Anzac Day driveway dawn service.
Very appropriate. And we'll make sure we make correspondence to those people acknowledging the fantastic work they did.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no others, that'll take me on to the General Manager's report. And the first one is the presentation of the audited financial statements. And now, councillors, I just might, before we go into those, just a bit of prelude about, we're all well aware some of these reports arrived late, which is unfortunate, and staff don't want it happening that way either. But this is a matter of the catch-up that we've been playing. The pleasing part about this is that, and I want to extend my appreciation to the staff involved in this, of getting us to where we are at the moment with these reports, with the numbers that are in them and the line items starting to come together. There's been considerable work have to go into this to get it where it is, to the audit office, and then to get our quarterly budget review. I commend all the staff, and I know the hours they put in over and above on the weekend to get us where we are. So we really appreciate it. Is there room for us to go further forward? Of course there is, but I firmly believe we're heading in the right direction, and I would hope all councillors would, of course, acknowledge that the fact that they came to us late is unfortunate, but they are there. So we need to deal with the big picture here, and again, I thank staff for the work they put in for it. So on that note, I might hand over to the General Manager to see where you want to talk to this report or who you'd like to.
Okay, at this juncture, our auditors are present to state anything in relation to the audit financial statements. And that's Ms. Ryan from the New South Wales Audit Office. Thank you.
Thank you. So Hilltops Council is one of our councils which is audited. The audit is delivered by an audit service provider, in the case of Hilltops, Deloitte. Today from Deloitte, we have the director responsible for the audit, Sanket Raja, on the Zoom call also. So for the detail of the report, I'll hand over to Sanket, and I'm also happy to assist with any questions after his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening all. My name is Sanket Raja, and I'm the Audit Director at Deloitte, responsible for the financial statements audit of the Council on behalf of the Audit Office of New South Wales. I would like to thank the councillors and the Mayor for the opportunity to present at the meeting today. The Audit Office has issued a clean audit opinion of your Council's financial statements for the financial year ended 30th June 2019. This means we have concluded that the financial statements contain no material misstatements and present fairly. We have come to appreciate that the local government is a unique sector and each council has its own challenges and opportunities. As there is no one-size-fits-all approach for councils, we have realized the importance to reflect the diversity of the sector in our audits and our reports as well. We tailor our audit approach each year with consideration to expected transactions at the Council and issues and themes emerging across the local government sector. This year, for your Council, we focused on the following areas. Council's extensive capital works and development program. The significant program resulted in over 25 million of asset renewals and additions during 2018-19 and includes, for example, roads around 8.5 million, water and sewer assets around 4.5 million, work in progress on major capital projects around 5.5 million. We also focused on valuation of infrastructure, property, plant and equipment. Local councils manage significant infrastructure assets and conduct revaluations on a regular basis. The net carrying amount of council's property, plant and equipment as at the end of June 2019 was $574 million. Council comprehensively revalued water and sewer assets, open space assets, swimming pools and other structures during 2019. During our audit procedures, we performed work to ensure that asset valuations were appropriate, asset registers are complete, and the values are accurately reflected in the financial statements. The financials section of the financial statements reports Council's performance against the OLG benchmarks as well. Council has not met the following OLG performance indicators during FY 18-19. One being operating performance ratio, currently less than 12%, and the benchmark is greater than 0%. Own source operating revenue ratio, currently 54.4%, benchmark is greater than 60%. Rates and annual charges outstanding percentage, currently 10.12%, slightly above the benchmark of less than 10%. That concludes my audit presentation for the current year. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. So, councillors, there we go. Any questions from councillors in regard to that to either of our guests that are present? Councillor Wallace. Just before you do, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Manchester, could you mute your screen, please? Coming through.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Comprehensive document, and thank the auditors for it. I just had one question in relation to the increase in auditing costs. They're up over 71% for the year compared to the previous year. I know there was a lot of work that went into them the previous year, so I was wondering if the auditor might be able to comment on that.
Just to clarify, is that the cost reported in the financial statements? Yeah. So that would have been the audit costs paid for audits during the current financial year. So it would have included some additional fees relating to the 2017-18 financial statement audit, as well as costs relating to the 18-19 audit. So I think once we have a more normalised schedule with the work being completed on time and as planned, you should see those costs stabilise year to year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other further questions from any councillors in regard to Councillor Armstrong?
Mr. Mayor, a comment rather than a question, I guess. For the benefit of councillors, the ARIC has reviewed the documents. The independent members of the ARIC had large numbers of questions in regard to the statements, and in particular to the use of internally restricted funds and the presence of negative cash for unrestricted funds. I guess the director certainly provided a comprehensive response in that regard, and I thank him for that. It was the general opinion of the independent members that whilst this is a bit of a grey area, it certainly isn't an area that should be encouraged by council or certainly something that should be sought to be repeated in the ensuing years. So I guess I'll leave it at that. I certainly did indicate that I would bring the independent members' concerns to council, and I thank Council for receiving those concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong, for your input. Councillor Manchester.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just what Councillor Armstrong spoke about, and it's good that we've had something from ARIC because it was a question I was going to ask whether they had a look at these statements, and if we can get some sort of report from ARIC about the statements and what's been happening as far as they're concerned over the last 12 months. I certainly haven't seen anything come through, so I'm wondering whether there is a report that comes into council from the ARIC meetings each month or each quarter, however often they have their meetings, but I certainly haven't seen anything.
Yeah, Councillor, I can probably touch on that. In previous times, that was the wish of the ARIC committee. For reasons that I'm not going to go into tonight, pretty well known, a lot of those things never got done. But I can assure you, in the direction we're heading now, those things will be fully reported to everyone as they happen. And happy to be part of that reporting. Any other questions from any other councillors in regard to that?
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, in relation to the comments from Councillor Armstrong. What concerns in particular do ARIC have regarding internally restricted funds? The fact that there wasn't a formal vote to vote them over, or could someone please highlight, given we don't know what their concerns are, we might be told the detail?
Councillor Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council, they were exactly the concerns that the definition of restricted funds was that those funds were restricted for a specific purpose. Externally restricted funds are essentially other people's money that is provided to council for specific projects. Internal restrictions constitutes funds that are allocated by council for specific projects, those being council funds, of course. The use of those funds for operational purposes without approval by council, whilst it is potentially a grey area, certainly caused significant concern to the independent members in terms of probity and accountability, given that the only people that can actually determine to use restrictions is council via the budgeting process. So that was basically it, Councillor.
Thank you for that.
There's no question. I mean, we just cannot use externally restricted funds for other purposes. So, I mean, it's not a grey area, it's black and white. Internally restricted funds can, but there needs to be a vote of council. So were there instances where internally restricted funds were used for purposes other than the internal restriction and a motion wasn't put up or a recommendation wasn't put up before council for the transfer of the funds, or was it that the funds were not clearly delineated in their usage in the first instance? What is the issue?
Councillor, there was no argument that externally restricted funds can't be used, and that wasn't what I said. What I did say is the internal restrictions were the areas that were considered to be grey, and that was exactly the concern of ARIC, that ARIC was unable to see that there was a resolution of council to use the cash to support the spending. The restrictions themselves were still listed as internally restricted, but they weren't cash backed. That was the point.
Thank you for that, clearing that up. Councillor Stadmiller, question.
Mr. Mayor, can I add a point B and move that all councillors receive the minutes for all of the ARIC committee meetings that have been held since Hilltops was formed?
I haven't got a problem with that, Councillor Stadmiller, if they can be gathered together and they're there, be forwarded out. I haven't got a problem at all.
May I, through you, Mr. Mayor, make a comment about these internally restricted funds? And I'll invite the internal auditors to provide further comment. This delves into, and Councillor Armstrong, through you, Mr. Mayor, does correctly address this point. It's a somewhat grey area, and council's issues at the time were insofar as council had substantial amounts receivable, for instance, from the Australian Taxation Office, some $5 million of very solidly receivable GST receipts, for instance, that affected this area and other matters. And so the cash backing for these amounts, and council wasn't in a very clear position with these cash balances where it was funding its operations from. And in the, I guess, the uncertainty about good, clear accounting disciplines and good, clear financial management boundaries, there was some definitional boundary which has subsequently been strengthened and tightened, and council won't be traversing into those issues again. Notionally, there is definitely some concern over that issue. In terms of the final position at balance date, the auditors were satisfied with the statements that were made in the financial statements. In terms of what's following in the management letter from the auditors about council's accounting practices during the 12 months leading up to the presentation of our financial statements, I think there are very different matters to be addressed. But in terms of the presentation of true and fair financial statements, that's one point where at balance date, I think they reflect a true and fair presentation of the facts and the accounts are properly reconciled. I really can't take it further than that, other than to say at balance date they present a true and fair view, and that council's accounting practices up to that date left a lot to be desired, and that created some uncertainty and some delay in the collection of cash balances that should have been in council's bank account funding its normal operations, which led to these concerns. I've now asked the external auditors to comment further.
It's Dominica here from the Audit Office. Through you, Mayor, if it suits you, probably not the right forum for me to provide further comments on this matter, but certainly happy for the this matter was discussed in some detail in the last ARIC meeting, so the councillors will be able to see our discussions minuted there.
Thank you very much. That'll be the appropriate manner for it to be distributed to councillors. Thank you. So, having said that,
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Tuckerman.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Mayor, when are we likely to see the management letter and the responses?
Who will answer that?
I haven't. Have we received it?
It's Dominica here. I can just check the status of that.
We haven't received them as yet, Councillor Tuckerman, through you, Mr. Mayor.
We haven't received a draft for comment yet, but I guess over the next few months.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, as soon as we do receive that, certainly it will form part of the ARIC agenda, and as we discussed this evening, as has been my practice in the past, all minutes, agendas is circulated to all councillors as appropriate, as they are an advisory committee to council, and you should be aware of it. So that will happen.
Mr. Mayor, just or through you to the General Manager, we were advised by the previous General Manager that we weren't entitled to get the ARIC minutes. There'd been previous inquiries regarding them, and we were told that councillors weren't entitled to receive.
Yep, Councillor Fleming, I'm happy to answer that. And there was some information provided to all us councillors by some former directors and some staff that were there. That in that vein, Councillor Armstrong and I, as part of council members on the ARIC, attended a seminar in Albury in regard to ARIC committees, and we spoke about this when we returned from that meeting, the increased workload and verification of what an ARIC committee will be involved in, and it's quite lengthy. And that conference was where the first day I discovered that, yes, it's ARIC committee is quite open. You can have people attend the meeting if they have questions to ask at the meeting. And of course, all the agenda and minutes should be distributed to all the councillors. And we came back to council, and Councillor Armstrong and I both spoke about that at a council meeting. And the follow-up that never happened is probably, as I said, I won't go into any further detail with that tonight why that didn't happen. But I'm here to tell you, as I said earlier, and I'll repeat it one more time, that the direction we're heading into now, that will all change. And all councillors will be informed and up to date on information as council staff can deliver it. I'll do the best to deliver when I receive information, but I don't receive a lot of information till the same time as everyone else will. So we'll all be on the same page there, and especially about sensitive and important and vital information as an ARIC committee. So I'll give you my assurance as the General Manager has just given his. So on that note, we've just had a pretty good discussion about it. I'll put that recommendation that's there for councillors. Have I got a mover? Moved Councillor Manchester, thank you. Seconded Councillor Rolls. All those in favour? Hands. We've got a unanimous up there. Thank you, councillors. Takes me to item to our guest.
They can leave if they wish. They're happy to.
Thank you very much, Dominic and Sanjay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Item 2093, the cash investment report. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation.
Move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Seconded. Second, Councillor Armstrong. Sorry, I missed that. Councillor Armstrong. Is there any questions? No, I'll put that. All those in favour? Got a unanimous there. Thank you. That takes me to 2094.
Just over the page.
Which is there, which is the outstanding rates and charges collection report, which there's a bit of a report there and some graphs there, councillors, for you, and receive and note the report. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? We've got a unanimous again. Thank you, councillors. Takes me to 2095, the quarterly budget review, and that falls in under the little bit I had to say before the budget about commending the staff to get it where they've got it, and the work they've done, albeit the report's late, but it's there. And again, I express my thanks to the staff. So would the Building Director like to talk to that, or the General Manager, just before we go to it?
I'll pass to Director Hughes, who did the work.
All right. Do you want a motion?
Well, I'll get a move in a second. Second for the recommendation. Yeah, I'm going to move Councillor Fernie, second Councillor Manchester. Thank you. So it's moved and seconded. Now, would you like to have me talk?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, councillors. I'm very happy to present the budget review statement for as of the 31st of March with a projection through to the 30th of June 2020. The March quarterly budget review depicts a consolidated full-year operating surplus of after capital contributions of $3.485 million, which compares to the 2019 actual results, which we just looked at $3.352 million surplus. The quarterly budget review forecasts a consolidated operating deficit before capital contributions of $6.091 million compared to the 2019 full-year actual operating deficit of $7.473 million. This projected operating deficit before capital contributions will occur through reduced income streams compared with the original budget expenditures in excess of budget, which had no identified source of funds, and will ultimately be covered from Council's own revenue sources within its consolidated reserves. This budget presents a more detailed picture than the previous budgets that we've presented. However, it demonstrates that council is heavily reliant on somewhat uncertain external capital grant funding sources to fund a significant portion of its base operations. And concurrent with the presentation of the financial statements tonight, at this council meeting, it's disappointing to be forecasting another full-year financial result which compares so closely with the 2019 outcomes. I won't speak. What's presented in the reports is a very detailed analysis, a series of very detailed adjustments to realign the budget and to produce a forecast year-end result, which we have a high degree of confidence and we feel we can rely on, and we've had previously in possibly the last several years in Hilltops Council. To put it in the vernacular, I think that enables us for the first time in many years to have a glass half full perspective rather than a glass half empty. It is disappointing to be looking at a substantial pre-capital operating deficit, but to have quite a granular focus over a very large and ambitious capital works program, and to have some very clear picture of our capacity and the excess of that, or our works program over that capacity in terms of our workforce and our materials and contracts and our overheads, and our capacity to manage that works program is encouraging to me as the responsible accounting officer to have a better handle and a better capacity to work with the council and the new general manager at the executive level of the organisation to move forward from a dearth of financial information in a timely manner, and a bit of a try on, you might think, to talk about a timely manner when the report came so late, but I will apologise for the lateness of the report, but not for the reason of being late, which was to work to improve the level of information and accuracy of that information so that we could get to the point where we could have confidence in the information that we were reporting to you. Is it perfect? I'm sure it's not. Is it vastly improved from what we've been able to report previously? Yes, it is. So without further ado, I put in front of you the March 2020 quarterly budget review, which puts us in a better position to forecast our results for this financial year and work together as a council and a management team to work towards a much better financial future for the Hilltops region with greater confidence. And I thank you for the time you spent listening to me.
Thank you for that, Director. I'd move in a second. Are there any questions there before I put this on? Any questions? I've got to move in a second. Councillor Flannery's got a question.
Mr Mayor, question for the Director. The employee cost increase, it says reallocation of expenditure costs allocation from projects. So, could the Director just explain that, please? I gather that as some of these projects have commenced, the wages component and on costs has been attributed from the project itself back to employee costs. But do we have more FTEs, the same number of FTEs getting an increased overtime rate? And how is contractors dealt with in this whole equation? But could the Director explain the employee cost increase, please?
The reallocation of costs from the capital projects back into the correct position in the actual costing, Councillor.
But how has it come about? Is it purely related to projects where we've had grant funding, is it increased? Is it purely related to grant funding, or is it from continuing operations? What's the basis of the cost increase?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The major movement here comes from the capital program. Your capital program is funded both by revenue and by external reserves and grant funding. So the moment you take out those projects, it's called a job cost recovery, and that job cost recovery goes back into the employee cost to actually increase those. So it is a reallocation from the jobs back into your operational area in this aspect, because revenue hasn't gone across with those projects at this particular point in time. It comes back into your budget. Those particular projects then will be form a part of a report which will come back to council for them to consider whether they'll be actually adopted for the 2021 year.
Thank you.
Simon, if I may, through Mr. Mayor, this $600,000 is effectively the long service leave, sick leave, those on-cost components that have been taken out of the capital jobs and pushed back to operational. Is that correct?
The employee costs are made up of many things, yes, Greg. That's correct, Councillor. They move back in there under employee expenses, but employee expenses cover a range of things from your superannuation all the way through to workers' compensation and obviously wages as well.
Thank you.
If I may, through you, we've over allocated through the commitment to a capital works program of a certain volume. We've allocated a degree of these additional charges to projects that hasn't been recovered through capitalisation of those works because they haven't occurred, and that's had to come back, and that's the reason for this reversal of that.
Probably through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer I'm trying to establish is, are these almost once-off costs? Because if we go back to the original budget, we budgeted on something like $3.9 million in employee costs. I don't actually have the figure right in front of me. The actual amount will be 4.39, I think, off the top of my head. So we're going to have, there's an increase of 550,000. Is that going to feed, is the increase going to feed into our ongoing operations, ongoing budget, and is it something that we're going to have to deal with through either productivity increases or future staff reductions, or is it more likely a once-off associated with the projects? Is it an increase in FTEs or is it overtime? Is it a mixture? And how will it impact ongoing operations 2 and 3 years down the track?
Councillor, this is a phenomenon that occurred because we have budgeted to absorb 100% of the capital of the labour that we predicted to utilise on projects, but we haven't delivered those projects. And so what's happened, because those projects haven't been delivered, we haven't been able to capitalise that labour, and instead have had to absorb it back into the mix. If we continue to be overly optimistic in our capacity to deliver a capital works program at the rate that we've budgeted over the last 2 years, then this will not be a one-off phenomenon. We would continue to budget for these kind of absorptions, and then be at a final budget review would have these kind of adjustments coming back at the end of the year for an actual adjustment. Now that we've got this degree of accuracy in our budget process, we would see this kind of adjustment every year if we failed to deliver our program at the rate that we've been unable to deliver this year. Then that phenomenon would repeat.
Thank you.
Just three, Mr. Mayor, if I can, to the Director. Director, in your opinion, is this the product of an overly optimistic capital program? Capital Works program?
That could be, Councillor. It's a very complex situation, and I feel that this is something that, as councillors and an executive team, these are very fresh numbers that diagnose a situation where we haven't delivered. It's very clear over 2 successive financial years, Hilltops Council has, for whatever reason, not delivered its complete capital program. A forensic analysis of how that has come about will be a useful thing. Whether council has the capacity and the budget to conduct such a forensic analysis, I'm not sure. However, what is, I think, in my mind, and certainly through, if you can indulge me a few more seconds, through the discussions I've had with the General Manager, what's of vital importance is that we don't repeat through the budget and the operational planning process, is to go ahead, forge ahead with repeating the same issues into our next budgetary cycle, so that we produce another 12 months of the same kind of economic and productivity outcomes. We must look for the reasons going forward, at least. I doubt that we will have the capacity to forensically diagnose the cause. However, we must try to avoid replicating the same issues and find a better and more successful way of working forwards to improve our efficiency economically and in terms of works and capital program and maintenance program productivity, so as to avoid these outcomes in future.
Thank you for that, Director. Okay, so we've had a bit of any more questions to Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of issues. Just wanted to get an explanation on page 17 of the report. There's a sale of investments line. It's under net cash provided or used in operating activities, sale of investments, which the current budget is 21 million, actual year to date is 0. What does that line mean? What are the investments? I've got another question too, but I'll get that one, answer that one.
Sale of infrastructure, property and plant equipment, sale of investments.
This is the rotational flow in our cash flow statement of our investments into the money market. So it looks like a very, very large, that we've been sold a very large investment somewhere, but it's just the rotational cycle of our operations through very secure short-term money market instrument, sort of 6 and 9 month type of security, bank type investments.
Thank you. And just one more, if I can, Mr. Mayor. I know the Director's aware of my concern in relation to the collection of user charges and fees for this financial year. And I still note that our actual year-to-date recovery is less than 50%. And looking at the audited statements for last year, I note that we were overestimated user charges and fees at 22%. We're out by approximately just over $4 million. I wonder if we're not heading for the same situation, or, I did ask this question in workshop and I'm still not convinced that we're going to get it all. But it seems like an awfully large proportion of the user charges and fees that are still to be collected. But I'll take council staff's word for it that they will be.
I share your sentiment, Councillor Wallace. Any other questions in regard to the report? We've covered off everyone. Okay, so I had a mover and a seconder. All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand. think we've got a unanimous one there. We got everyone? Yep. Thank you, councillors, for that. Takes me to the next one, the 2096, the delivery program half-yearly progress report. Again, the same commentary I would make, councillors, when I put that in front of you, and the recommendation is to endorse that. Do I have a mover and a seconder before we go anywhere? Move, Councillor Manchester, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Horton, was it? Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Any questions in regard to that report, councillors?
Through Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Councillor Armstrong.
Upon review of the document, I guess I'd just like some reassurance that the percentages completed are rough estimates rather than accurate estimates, because I'm looking at a number of them that that perhaps would seem to be overly optimistic. Can we have some little bit of a context thrown back to us in regards to how those percentages are calculated?
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. I'm happy to hand to the General Manager to address that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, on the review of the document, it does need a review. I don't believe I can answer your question directly, so I will give you an opinion on it. The status of the completion, 50%, it may be the indication of the work undertaken on the assessment of the respective director or manager to say the task before them is 50%. They estimated 50%, notwithstanding the measures and the indicators. At times says the measure and indicator of success is how many meetings were undertaken. But the commentary doesn't talk about meetings. At other times, it talks about how many projects have been completed, and the comments don't talk about projects. That's not to say that work has not been done, but there needs to be a significant amount of work done to connect not only the action to the measure and indicator, to the status of completion, to the comment. I don't have a clear answer on many of the points. By the time the information came through to us, it was too late to appropriately review all of those matters. My commitment to you is to revitalise this report so that it is very clear that the action that is requested and approved, there is a measure that is relevant to it that indicates success, and the status of completion. If it is a point where you have 5 projects and that's the measure, and you say it's 50% complete, but no projects are complete, I believe the commentary should give you information to say we have done the foundation work where each of these projects are at between 60 and 70%, for example, that you understand that the quantum of work towards these projects is underway, but the projects themselves as the measurable will only be achieved at the end of the year.
Thank you. That clarifies it. I was just concerned that an exact example on page 25, where there's been four meetings held, that the status was 95% completed. So that clarifies it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is just a comment more than anything, and I realise I'm still a very inexperienced councillor, coming to terms with some of the shorthand of council. But if somebody could help me, or when the report comes out, just what all the shorthand is, for example, under the council roles, what AFL P/F S/CR. I sort of have worked out most of them, but it would certainly ease the reading. And I noticed the Mayor nodding his head.
I won't comment on what that acronym is.
I really get lost in the shorthand sometimes.
For you, Mr. Mayor, if I had prepared this document, I would have thrown myself on the sword, namely because, by way of example, notwithstanding this report in some way has been inherited and modified, and the appropriate strategic review, time hasn't been a friend to us. But where you have a key at the top of the document which says SG, INF, CNC, GM, key priorities, I expect it should be, if the initials are there, the description should say strategic growth, infrastructure. I believe CNC may have even been a precursor term that now describes our strategy and operational performance director, which
is that the director with a long name?
I think this is. I think this would be corporate and community, or it could be corporate and commercial. But the key doesn't say that. One of the things that I would like to do is to make the titles of the directors more simplified. That there would be a director of infrastructure, director of planning, and director of corporate. I may acquiesce to and one other word, but no more than 3 words. Everyone understands what a planner does. Everyone understands what a corporate person does. Everyone understands what a general manager does. So I can only apologise that I too struggled with some of the acronyms.
And especially...
That will be addressed.
Just interrupt, especially for the council role, I'd really like to know when it sort of an R, is that responsible for P/F? I think that's really important just to identify really what the council role is. On the other hand, I also appreciate the amount of work that has gone into this. And
look, and certainly I don't want, through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to be disingenuous to the work that has been done. This is work that either has been expected or in the past done in this way. And I believe staff genuinely believed that they have met the requirement to complete this grid. What I am saying is that it does need a review, it does need a refresh, and the simple thing of making keys for acronyms would be a good start.
Thank you. Councillor Stadmiller.
Just a question here on page 23. Reticulate natural gas to Harden residents, where we've conducted a feasibility study to have natural gas connected and reticulated to the Harden township. What are we doing with the information amassed, which is in the far right column, and who are we lobbying to actually get the gas connection into Harden? Can we get a bit of an update on that?
Unless Manager Crisp is across that, I will need to take that on notice. I'm not that detailed for that specific process. So, Mr. Crisp, if you are unable to answer or give commentary, please take it on notice.
Through the Mayor, I will have to take that one on notice.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Stadmiller.
So that'll take it on notice, and Council will get back to us all, Councillor Stadmiller, on that matter. Okay, councillors, if all the questions have been put, I'm happy to put the recommendation. I've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? We got unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That takes us on to item 2097, the development application stats for April 2020. The recommendation, receive and note of what's in front of us. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved, Councillor Horton. Seconded, Councillor Walker. Thank you. Any questions or commentary on that report? I'll put it. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes me to 2098, a DA for the subdivision of 74 lots and new roads at 195 Henry Lawson Way, Young. Is what I'd call a in-depth and pretty professional application attached to that, councillors, with a recommendation there. So for start, I'll get a mover and a seconder, please. Moved, Councillor Horton. Seconded, Councillor Rolls. Happy to take questions if councillors got questions for staff. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a comment first. First of all, these 74 700 square metre lots has probably been out of character with the region. But having said that, like you said, there's a very comprehensive report that can justify that and say it fits the strategic plan and the environmental plan documents. But I have a comment on the traffic. I think it relates to 555 vehicle trips per day, 70 vehicle movements per hour. I asked a question at one time, or it's come up in traffic committee, about the intersection, and I noticed there's turning lanes into this subdivision. If we move down to Iandra Street and Blackett Avenue, I've got an unanswered email that where we from traffic committee asking about was there any reports come back from RMS about turning lanes from Grenfell Road, come Iandra Street into Blackett Avenue.
Director Senator Gray.
Someone like to... David?
I'm just going back through the report at the moment, looking at the responses from the relevant agencies. While I can't guarantee that they actually looked at that potential option, I know that they have reviewed the proposal and put their requirements into the conditions of approval.
Can I add to that?
Councillor Walker, yep.
Yep. But the traffic committee was probably brought up in traffic committee after that document was written.
I'll have to defer to the infrastructure team, and as they actually are members of the committee, not myself. But so I can follow up on that if you like.
Yeah, look, my comment on that would be that there are some concerns about what Councillor Walker has raised. I don't know if it will indirectly affect with the increased traffic. Of course it will, but it needs to be addressed without any increase in traffic, I believe. But in regard to this subdivision, I'm not too sure if it's to be entered into worrying about it at this particular stage with this division. But I understand the point, and I have the same concerns, Councillor, about that intersection. So any other questions?
Outcome. Can we get an answer back on what's happening to that intersection? Because it's an ongoing question that's been coming up several times at this point.
Yep, for sure. So take that on and get back to the traffic committee to report. I had a couple of hands up. Councillor Manchester.
Yes, Mr Mayor. With this development, I know that the traffic movements, and I had similar concerns as Councillor Walker, but there is nothing mentioned about the Iandra Blackett Avenue intersection. But I don't agree with their traffic movements of 500 odd vehicles. It's in 74 lots. That's an enormous amount of vehicles that. Assuming there was only a couple of vehicles per house, they'd be in and out there all day long. So I certainly don't agree with that. I did notice in the report that they talked about the water and sewerage as coming off the reticulation system. I just got concerned. Where does the reticulation system for that end of town run? So can someone help me with that? Well, as far as the sewerage is concerned, mainly, obviously the water would be out of the North Young Reservoir, and one is if I assume the main is big enough and out to the Henry Lawson Way. If not, it'll be up to the developer to upgrade it, I would assume. But what about the sewerage? Can someone help me with that?
I'm not sure.
Through the Mayor, if I may, the water supply retic is in Henry Lawson, so that'd be where the takeoff point would be for this subdivision. I'm going to have to take on notice the sewer. I'm reasonably certain it's down the Fontenoy, Red Hill area, where they're going to have to probably put a rising main or some description in to get into the sewer network. But I will take that one on notice to come back.
Councillor Armstrong.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, from a previous life, I'm reasonably certain that the sewer finishes at about what used to be the former JD's Jam Factory. That there's no sewer service on the Henry Lawson Way past that point. The water is extended back out to well past that, probably a kilometre to a kilometre and a half. So I would imagine that the water supply should be sufficient. But I have some concerns about the rising main and its interface with the existing sewer main back at essentially the intersection of Fontenoy Street and Henry Lawson Way, and also whether or not those properties on the other side of the road will have access to that rising main, given that they will be within the prescribed distance to be levied a sewer charge. It'd be pretty hard to levy them a sewer charge when they can't connect.
A very valid point, Councillor. From Councillor Walker's got a question.
Sure. And mine is virtually along the same line. My question is that sewer main, it mentions a rising sewer main from the subdivision and going into the existing, but that existing would be seem to be unnecessarily going through the centre of town, where surely at that part of the town it could be diverted around the town a little and towards the sewage treatment works.
Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, I agree that it's a comprehensive report. However, I share some of the concerns of the other councillors, and with noting that some of the directors will be taking questions on notice, is it advisable that we defer this? And I almost hate saying that, but I have significant concerns about the Blackett Avenue Iandra Street intersection. From my looking at it, I worry about whether this increase in load is going to be able to cope with that and what the traffic volumes might be. I actually think the traffic volumes coming out of this subdivision, it accounts for 3.5 vehicle movements per block, assuming there's 2 cars. So I don't think that's actually overly optimistic. I think most houses will probably have 1.5, if not 2 cars on average, and to go in and out 3.5 times won't be very difficult to do if you go to and from work a couple of times to cover it, and then the shops. So given the concerns about some of the concerns about the water rising main, and I think we need to relook at, or I would like to discuss later in this meeting, Blackett Avenue and Iandra Street, because someone's going to have to pay for an intersection upgrade there, and the need for that will increase if this subdivision goes ahead.
Yeah, take your points on board, Councillor Flannery. My take on the Blackett Avenue intersection is the same. There needs to be some work done there, but you talk about this subdivision of 74 in proposed to council in 3 stages. I would suggest to you that the first stage will take some time to kick off to be fully established. I would suggest the second stage will take more time, of course, and the third stage I would imagine will be quite some time down the line. In that timeline, I would hope that the matter will be resolved at Blackett Avenue, Iandra intersection, well and truly before, I'd imagine, before that subdivision of the full 74 will ever be completed or filled up. So I have a bit of comfort in that hopefully the Blackett Avenue Iandra business will be sorted out long before that development is fully staged.
Yeah, I acknowledge that, Mr Mayor, but the fact is councils need to consider the development application in its entirety at the beginning, because once it's approved, you don't get any opportunity to go back and re-levy either Section 94 funding or anything else. And in considering a major development, we need to consider the impact on the whole surrounding road network, sewer network, whatever it is, and make those adjustments at the beginning. So it's where councils continually land themselves in hot water by not looking at the long-term impacts and then leaving future councils to deal with the problem.
I might just ask the Director, would he like to make a comment in regard to that, please?
The site itself with the 74 lots is one of several sites up there that have potential to develop into residential lands. And there's no doubt a more comprehensive process for looking at the issues relating to water, sewer, traffic, etc. would be advantageous. Our assessment of the application is on its own. It stacks up. It's all okay. But if we are going to plan for the long-term growth through that whole precinct, more work is required. I wouldn't say it's enough to hold this development back, but it is something we need to prioritise in the near future.
Thank you for that comment, Director. On that note,
Mr Mayor, if I can, one further point. I think that as a resident of an area not far from there, I suppose, I don't necessarily say that I have an interest in it, and I don't propose to declare one there. But as a regular user of Fontenoy Street and that part of Henry Lawson Way, I would strongly suggest that the majority of the people buying blocks of land and building houses there are not going to go down Henry Lawson Way into Blackett Avenue. They're going to turn into Fontenoy Street and go straight down Fontenoy Street. So I actually think that the channelization of Fontenoy Street, or a better traffic solution at Fontenoy Street at that intersection, is just as important, and in the long run may well be more important, given that there will be an opportunity to use Jasper Avenue as a secondary route to the CBD of Young. So I see that intersection as being just as important, in actual fact, in some respects primary, as opposed to that intersection of Henry Lawson Way and Blackett Avenue. So I'd certainly like to see some traffic counts undertaken there, and in regard to the expectation that all the traffic goes down Blackett Avenue, I think that's perhaps something that this report hasn't identified, and we should certainly, I share Councillor Flannery's concerns that if we don't cross our T's and dot our I's, then we may find ourselves in a situation where the rest of the ratepayers are paying for these upgrades.
Thank you. Input, Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, I just did some figures on the number of people who on average live in a home in Australia, and added that to the number of lots that will have homes on them potentially. It comes to 185 people living across the 74 lots, which is around about 18%, I think, of the projected population increase for Hilltops in the next 20 years, as described by the Canberra Joint Region Organisation. So I just want to make councillors aware that we're looking at around 18% of our population for Hilltops going in that one area if they're all sold. And on top of that, it's quite a lot of people when we're in the middle of doing an LEP where we're looking at rezoning other areas. So just something to be mindful of.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, councillors, I've had a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that's there relating to this subdivision. So I'd like to put that recommendation. All those in favour, raise your hand, please. One time on account for me.
Horton, Rolls, Tuckerman, Stadmiller, Wallace, Manchester, Ingram.
Those against?
Walker, O'Connor, Armstrong, Flannery.
Put them, Deirdre. That recommendation has been adopted. Thank you, councillors. Next item on the agenda is the 2099. I missed a page, no I haven't.
Yep.
The public exhibition of the Coppabella Wind Farm Draft Voluntary Planning Agreement Community Enhancement Fund. Got it. So there's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation there. Get a mover and a seconder to start that off, please. Councillor Wallace, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. Happy to take questions, councillors, if you've got any questions in regard to that document. Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, can I just get some clarification around as to how we came up with the figure of $2,500 for each turbine?
Anyone in the room like to address or knows the answer to that?
Director of Sustainable Growth.
Director of Sustainable Growth.
Just looking through the figures here now, just to confirm that. I'll have to get back to you on the details, but I assume it's through the original approval by the state rather than by us. But like I said, I'll get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, look, I'm not sure of the exact origin of it, but there was an amendment to the DA which sought to decrease the number of turbines but increase the size of each turbine, which would have gone to the State Planning Authority. But there was discussion last time that I think the council put a submission in that the agreed amount per turbine should be increased with the increased size of each turbine, and it doesn't look like that's happened, because otherwise the yield that we would receive per megawatt decreased.
Yes, I do recall a conversation around that, Councillor. Yeah. Any other questions in regard to Councillor O'Connor?
I'm actually on that committee, but we haven't met for a very long time. And Councillor Flannery is actually very right. We were talking about an increased amount per turbine because the size was increasing and the number were decreasing. Now, I don't know that we came up with, I don't know if that's the increased figure or that's the original figure per turbine that we had for Bengo and Rye Park. I think that would need to be looked at. Okay.
So the director said that he will have a look at that and get back with an answer. I'm just wondering, is that going to play any consideration to this recommendation going up and being accepted or not? Councillors, I suppose that's the question I'm asking. I can ask it easy by putting it up and voting on it, or if there's anyone like to discuss what they thought about that. Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr Mayor, if we are going to vote on this issue, we need to know how we have come up with the figure of $2,500. And if we can't do that, we can't rightly really vote on this and work out whether we're getting value for money or not. So if councillors are willing to vote on it, I'd be happy to see an 80% increase in the cost of the turbine.
I think the way I'll go here is that I might move that council defers this item to our June meeting, and so we can get the necessary information that's been asked for and relevant to the costings, and which is pretty important. I agree. So I'm happy.
Move that we defer it.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester, and second it, Councillor O'Connor, that we defer this matter to the June council meeting. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That's important. We get back to that. 2100.
188, 189 pages.
2100 major road grants update. Councillors, there's a report there about some major grant roads upgrade. The one thing I'd point before we went any further was that I pointed out to staff on page 188 or 189, it is there in the bridges renewal program where it gets down to Bundabo Road Bridge replacement, 50% of the project funded. We all know that's 100% funded. That was a little slip up there, but that...
I can speak to that, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor, the 50% funding that goes to the Bundabo Road Bridge is related to the Bridge Renewals Program. The other 50%, where the Mayor is correct, it is 100% funded. The other 50% comes from the Heavy Vehicle Safety Productivity Program. So it is 100% funded, but it is only 50% funded from that Bridges Renewal Program. So I'm sorry that was a bit ambiguous.
Thank you for that. That's fine. That explains that where that was. So,
Mr Mayor, just a question for the director, and probably have to take it on notice, but as I actually drove past the bridge today, I wondered, do we need a full bridge replacement, or is it possible to jack the bridge up, replace the piers? Because my understanding it's simply the piers that are have shown cracks, and drop the pavement back down onto it.
Through the Mayor, Councillor, which bridge are we referring to?
This is the Wamba number.
The Wamba number bridge. It's only the piers that are showing deterioration, I understand. Do we need a full bridge replacement?
Through the Mayor, unfortunately we do. Girders are also woefully undersized on that project as well. We've got footing issues as well. So foundation and bridge structure girders are deficient. And actually it was the girders that were found to be deficient first. And with investigations, it was found that the foundations were also suspect as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Director. Mr. Crisp, Acting Director. Titles. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that item before we Any further? Councillor Manchester, thank you. Councillor Wallace. Any further questions in regard to that report? No? Okay, I'll put that. Councillors, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moves us on to 2101, the design and construction of inclusive playground in Young project update. And
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move a motion.
Councillor Armstrong has a motion he would like to move.
Would you like me to read that motion?
Please, Councillor Armstrong.
There are multiple parts to this motion, so I'll read them. Part A, receive and note the report, and Part B, rescind Part 4A and 4B of Resolution 333 of 18 on the basis there is a change of circumstance which gives rise to a belief by Council that a satisfactory result may be achieved by inviting open tenders, and C, note the services offered by Variety New South Wales as outlined in Attachment 1, and D, pursuant to the provisions of Clause 178(1) subsection B of the Local Government General Regulation, referred to as the regulation, decline to accept any tenders received in connection to RFT 480 of 2019, and in accordance with Clause 178(3) A of the regulation, cancel the proposed contract, and E, pursuant to the provisions of Clause 178(3) Section B of the regulation, invite fresh tenders for the delivery of the inclusive playground.
Thank you, Councillor. That's and I have a copy of that in front of me now. Do we have a copy to show councillors? Did you forward that through, Councillor?
Yeah, we saw it.
I believe the General Manager is in possession of a copy, yes.
Okay. So
Deirdre will now put it on, share her screen with you, so it'll go blank.
So you can have a look at that. And just take it in a bit.
That was not the resolution that I read out then.
No, that's the old. That's the old one. It's the new one.
Sorry.
You're. Yeah.
Councillors, I'm happy to second that motion, and my understanding of the motion is to clear up the past of what happened with this project and to enable us to go forward with it to an open tender, and given the current market as we come out of COVID-19 and interest being shown by more people that may be able to deliver this project, it could well work in our favour for a comparable price to have the project completed. So the only thing that when I asked some questions about that was in regard to going back out to open tender, it may delay the process, extend it by 5 or 6 weeks. My comment to that was, given that 18 months ago we had some photographs taken, I don't think another month or 6 weeks will make any difference in our time delivery being late, but it could well have to do with the costings and the actual product that we produce. So I have no concerns about the motion that's been put on the floor by Councillor Armstrong. I'm happy to take questions or...
Mr Mayor, question. Councillor Armstrong has in his motion, note the services offered by Variety New South Wales. I, having read the report, was probably thinking that full naming rights or branding Variety Lives Place, given where we started and where we are now, I'm not so sure that I see it as appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. I'll probably flick back to Councillor Armstrong for his commentary on that, because I believe he has similar views. Councillor Armstrong.
So thank you, Mr Mayor. In the motion, I'm proposing that Council note those services, not necessarily take Variety New South Wales up on the services. I feel that there is ample opportunity, certainly, to provide a name that fits within the local context, and I would suggest most respectfully that council should consider a form of monument to the late Mrs. Jess Bell, a person who fought for the education for disadvantaged children, children with handicaps, and championed the foundation of the former Bell Haven school at Young, which has since closed. I think that this inclusive playground is in keeping with the spirit and the intent of Mrs. Bell in her devotion, support, and love of these children that would use the facility. I guess that's a matter for council, and that's down the track. My suggestion is there, or my preference would be to note the services offered by Variety, but that's not necessarily committing to naming the facility in accordance with the Variety Club's wishes.
Thank you for that detailed explanation, Councillor Armstrong. I'm sure everyone's aware of the intent of that now. So if there's no other questions in regard to Councillor Armstrong's motion from the floor, I'll put that. Sorry, Councillor Rolls. Good question. Sorry, Councillor.
Yes, through the Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just need to be clear that the tenders going out would be the same design of the playground that has been approved, or are we looking at a complete new design?
No, we're going out. The tenders will go out for the design that was done, and that was agreed on. That'll go just go out for tenders. Yep.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
That's fine. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Unanimous, yep. All good. Thank you, councillors. Look forward to, getting that on the way. Turned over to
Works Report 198.
Item 2102, the Hilltops Works Report. Councillors, there's a report in front of you. Do I have a move and a seconder first before we go anywhere? Move to Councillor Armstrong. Seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the. I'd like to amend it so that we have a Part B to the motion that we receive for council to receive a detailed report on the Blackett Avenue, Iandra Street intersection, which would include original budgeted amount, expenditure to date, and projected final expenditure. And that would be a full stop. And then as a bit of a comment, noting Councillor Armstrong's comments from Aric, there's been considerable increased work occur there. I'm wondering where those funds have come from, and was a motion required to come back to council for the expenditure of those works, because the job was nearly complete and has since been ripped up. Now, surely that wasn't part of the original budget, that council get to the point where it was about to mark the lines on the road and then go and plough it all up again. So I think far from receive and note the report, we need a detailed explanation as to what has occurred here and where the money is coming from.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flannery. And then I'd imagine the mover and the seconder would be happy enough for that dot point B to go into the full stop point there. Yep. Thank you, councillor. So that would be included as dot point B in that recommendation, which is very valid.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Armstrong. Yep.
Just a question, just in regard to that work at Blackett Avenue and Henry Lawson Way. Can I just get some advice as to whether that was RMS ordered works?
I don't know. Mr. Chris?
Through the Mayor, that work was not RMS ordered works. It was repair block grant works funded, source of.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stadmiller Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to commend the staff on some work done recently behind East Street in a small laneway, and the General Manager for attending to it. It had suffered some stormwater damage and it's since been levelled out. I'd just like to see whether we could have a seal put over that small laneway. It could be the last laneway in Harden that still has a dirt surface. It'd be making some residents there very happy who find it quite difficult in that back laneway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's been noted. Thank you for that. Councillor.
Mr Mayor, just another, I have asked this as a previous meeting. Look, I appreciate the reports and noted by Councillor Stabenow the work that's done, but could we get the reports so they actually reflect the work that is either has happened or is going to happen rather than ongoing? Or I note that there's still one of the ovals still lists line marking the athletics track, and I'm pretty sure we all know we don't know when a lot of the sporting events are going to occur again, but could we, what's listed in these reports and what happens in reality, there's a significant difference. Could we please get actual work and actual plan work, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Flannery, are you asking for a percentage completion and some sort of guide to say percentage completing, so whether it's a plan, whether the work has started, and once the work has started, the percentage of completion, would that assist you? Is that what you're asking for?
No, more specifically, and the report has been improved since the last time I asked, but there are substantial areas where it's just got garden maintenance ongoing. Well, there hasn't been any garden maintenance in Neil Street now for, look, I wouldn't like to say the exact time, but for a period, and yet it's garden maintenance ongoing. Garden maintenance, Newson Park ongoing. Some of it's just not occurring. So if it's not occurring, don't put it in.
Yep.
And then...
Okay, I'll take that on notice, Councillor, and we'll try to make the document more informative. What I might do is take an example from this report, provide that in the newsletter for comment as a guide to what information you'd like to see in the full report, if that's acceptable.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've got some councillors there that haven't got themselves muted. I don't know whether they want to make comment or not. There's a bit of background noise coming through. One's Councillor Manchester, one's Councillor Armstrong, and one's Councillor Walker. And we're receiving back feed.
To me, I'm just...
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the water and sewage works and at the water meter replacements that are ongoing, and looking back at the quarterly budget review to see how much they're ongoing. And in some cases, we've actually struck the program out because we haven't spent any money there. I have spoken to the Director about this before, and by my simple calculations, there were around 280 water meters that had been replaced based upon these works reports, and at the last QBR there was no money spent. I'm afraid that I have to agree with Councillor Flannery in terms of the quality of information contained within the works report.
Look, through you, Mr. Mayor,
a bit of an issue.
Yep, certainly it's acknowledged we need to improve both the quality and the content of the information, and we'll take that on notice to ensure that the reports align so that it's not ambiguous or does not inform.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So taking that on board, and the dot point B that was put by Councillor Flannery and happy to be accepted by the mover and seconder, I'll put that item. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
All hands, yep. Thank you, councillors. It's unanimous. 2103 was the action summary report with the recommendation there and the reports there, councillors, again on, and I've spoke to the General Manager in regard to this, and this is a bit the same as those other reports. There's a bit of tidying up to be done and a little changes how they might be presented. So I've got a mover and a seconder for that. Recommendation moved Councillor Walker, thank you. Seconded Councillor Manchester down the bottom I saw. So any questions? Take questions, Captain Walker.
Yeah, just that one on on page 397, Weir Road Causeway. The report was to come back to this council meeting. Was any reason why? Any information where that's up to?
I'm sorry, Councillor, what page were we on?
397, is it? No, that wouldn't.
No 397 there.
Item 19, item 397 of 19, 2019.
397.
397.
We've got 391.
391, is it? Weir Road Causeway.
Weir Road, Old Weir Road Causeway.
Through the Mayor, if I may, you will have that report at the next June meeting.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we pulled that report because it wasn't ready.
Okay.
There wasn't an intent to have it, and it was drafted, but the work that I've done with Mr. Crisp, we weren't satisfied, so we pulled it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stadmiller's got a question.
Mr. Mayor, 17/262, Gale and Limestone BPA Steering Committee. A second council identifies suitable standing area for trucks on limestone to avoid travelling through the Gaylong village prior to 7 a.m. curfew. Look, trucks have been pulling before the village for a number of years now. We have a VPA where there's money there for that to be spent. We should be getting this back to the Gaylong community as quickly as possible and getting some sort of bay for these trucks to be housed in properly along that main road that's off the Burley Griffin Way before they do go into the village. It's something that should have been done years ago, and it's something that needs a focus of council now.
You, councillor, for that. I'm sure take that on.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just Councillor Stadmiller is correct. However, at the last VPA meeting, we did agree to the urgency or need for this to happen. I had a meeting on site at a proposed location with Councillor Manchester and the former director. The former director was to make contact with, we'll probably go back one step. We agreed we didn't want to turn it into a bigger than Ben-Hur project, but the former director was to make contact with the rail people, and we were going to try and make it as minimal as possible. I don't know where it's up to, but it was to come up before the next VPA meeting, which is scheduled to occur, I think, within the next fortnight. But with the director now no longer working, I don't know where that is at, but some progress was attempted.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Flannery, and staff will follow that up in that area and be ready for that next meeting that you have to work on that. Councillor Manchester.
Yeah, just a comment. Councillor Flannery is quite right with that, and they have made contact with rail infrastructure and John Holland with regards to the ownership of the land there. There's a bit of contention who does actually own the land, but John Osland was going to further investigate that with the mine manager Silvio, and I don't know whether that's happened either. And the other one I've got is it was actually highlighted to me in the press release yesterday or the day before with regards a high flow standpipe or meter, for people to collect water at Young. And it mentioned only 3,000 litres, which I thought was ridiculously low for people to go there and get only 3,000 litres, because I would have thought that they'd be collecting a lot more. Some people would collect 3,000 litres or 2,000 litres, but 3,000 litres from a high-flow standpipe for the public use is not a lot of water, and I can't understand why advertised in the press releases as only 3,000 litres. I just wonder whether there's a correction to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I took that advice direct from the then director, so I'll have to take that on notice, and I will report back to you the accuracy of that figure. I apologise if it's incorrect.
Yeah, well, certainly.
Also, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rolls.
Oh, sorry, pardon me for interrupting. Go. Just on the media release, if you don't know where the outflow is, how do you find directions? I don't think it was included. That's all.
It was
not being familiar.
Yep, you're right. And then I saw the media release, and I saw the first couple of comments come back on social media, and the location of it was pointed out very clearly to people who had asked. So it will be up there more officially. The reason I was contacted in regard to that announcement being made, the people in that department have worked hard to get that ready to go. They wanted to turn it on. People were there, wanted to use it, and I said, that's fine by me. Everything's fine to go. I don't need to be there. They did that, and they did the media release. And, yeah, some finer details was slipped like that, but it's been corrected. So happy for that to be corrected when they probably should have been mentioned first. We just presumed, I guess, that everyone knew where it was and it was where the O1 was, but we have to learn not to presume and make sure we clarify it for all our customers.
Yeah, and certainly we need to clarify the amount of water, because that would be pointless to do the similar sort of thing at Harden, because I know the water carriers there pick up 15 to 20,000 litres at a time.
My understanding was a tap. If you only got so much, you tapped again and it went again. But I'm not into that, so we'll look at that. Yeah,
I'll bring that back to your councillors and put that into the newsletter. And if required, we'll issue a new press release to correct the figure and highlight the location.
Yeah, and also, I'm concerned about the tapping size. The hose, talking about a 25 mil hose with a certain fitting on it. 25 mil hose would take hours to fill 10, 15, 20,000 litres. So can we have that checked before we actually install it and get it?
I'm pretty sure, John, you want to...
Through Mr. Mayor, the size of the connection may actually match up to the size of the litres, which both then might be in error if the volume of water is expected. So it sounds like the fitting is connected to the volume of litres as described. They may both be wrong. If one's wrong, the other might be wrong.
I'm pretty sure I can clarify that, because it says either a 50 mil or a 25 mil connection on the media release I saw. Yeah. There was a 50 mil on one side and a 25 mil on the other side of the thing. So,
well, certainly 50 mil will be is up there with it. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's how the arrangement was. Yeah, on that. Like I just tried to find that media release fiddling with the phone, which I shouldn't do, but I'm pretty sure that's the one I read. Yep. Okay, so the other points we'll have clarified and get back to everyone about that. So, any other questions on regard to that report? If not, I'll put the action summary report. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes me over to correspondence for information, and there's a recommendation there to have a mover and a seconder for that. Moved Councillor Stadmiller. Seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you. All those in favour? Again, it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes me over to notice of motions rescissions, and we have a rescission motion, councillors, tonight in regard to the resolution 20/85B and C from April meeting. The rescission motion's been there. There's been some conversation offline with councillors about this matter, so I'm happy to firstly get a mover and a seconder for the rescission motion, which would be Councillor Wallace and Councillor Horton. And happy for Councillor Wallace, to speak to his motion.
Thanks, Mayor. The first point I'd make is that councillors were provided last night with certain information which doesn't seem to form part of this business paper. I don't know where that makes these things stand, but in any event, the reason I brought this motion is because at the time I held the view, and I still do, that it wasn't appropriate and proper governance for a council motion to be brought from the floor uncosted and without any idea of cost, and just told that the money would be borrowed. I have great concerns about that sort of procedure and governance, and I don't think it's something that we as councillors should condone. I still have problems in relation to this, and I will speak to some of the information that was provided to councillors last night in furthering this debate. The blanket application of the motion that was in relation to food and beverage. Now, I know some businesses, and I'm sure that some are suffering terribly as a result of the coronavirus, but I'm sure others are doing quite well and may even be doing better than they were previously because of the nature of their business. Furthermore, there are other industries which were mandatorily shut down by government which weren't covered by this motion, including beauticians, gyms, tattoo parlours, massage parlours, and those businesses were not covered by this motion. And I think if we are to favour some businesses over others in our deliberations and our judgments, it's inappropriate and not fair to all ratepayers. In relation to sports fees, I make the same comments. And furthermore, the budgeted items from last night's email indicated 4 months non-usage as the period, whereas my understanding is a lot of these facilities are going to be open next Monday, and so hence they would only have been closed for just over 2 months. As a council, we are in a somewhat perilous financial position, although I know the director sees the glass as half full now, which is a good thing. And we need to know how much we need to borrow. We're already, before capital grants, in a deficit of over $7 million. So how much do we borrow, at what rate, and how is that done? My main difficulty with it is not the sentiment, it's not the actual content, but it is the governance issue. We just cannot operate as a council and a decision-making body if we have proper governance that moves motions from the floor that are uncosted, and we don't know how much we'd need to borrow to fund them. That's all. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. So he spoke for his motion. Would anyone like to speak against the rescission motion? Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak against it as the person who moved the original motion. Yes, whilst the exact figure wasn't known, I had a reasonable idea of the amount because I had looked at how much we had received in some of these charges. So what we are advised in the email is probably, I was expecting around $30,000. That said, I still think this is a very worthwhile investment in the community. At various points in my time on this council and previous councils, we've had all manner of requests put up to encourage new businesses into town, be it Hardin, Young or Wurrua. I am supporting the existing businesses we have. I always think it's a better investment to support those you have than to throw money at those who may or may not come. And I do note that the Mayor proposed that we provide financial assistance to Bunnings when they were looking at coming to the town, and even after they had made the decision. So I would have thought Bunnings would be the last people that we'd need to be providing financial assistance to. Yes, there are businesses that won't be covered by this. So if perhaps down the track we should look at providing assistance to other businesses, I think that would be worthwhile too. There is no point in us doing a lot of the work we're doing if we are going to lose businesses through a very difficult time. We are not $7 million in the red. We are $7 million in the red when you take grants away from our budget or our income position. Grants always make up part of government's income year in, year out. That's not to say that we don't have to change our current financial position, but it is absolutely untrue to say that we are $7 million in the red. I also think that money we have borrowed to fund pool projects, library projects, I doubt that they'll bring one iota of new business to town, but they are about the overall state of mind and well-being and cultural ambience, or however you might like to phrase it, of the community. And I think some of the people who are voting for this rescission motion or propose have been first to say we need a cultural precinct, we need a swimming pool. So I urge councillors to consider the bigger picture here, supporting those who have been most affected, and provide this funds. And if we don't want to provide it from borrowings, perhaps it can come from the funds that might otherwise go to council education. I think that's been untapped again this year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Anyone else to speak for the rescission motion? Councillor Horton has his hand up. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think Councillor Wallace has said it all. From my point of view, establishments are doing it tough, service establishments. Everybody's doing it tough. But none of those service establishments, I'll bet, have a debt of $7 million. The Hilltops Council does. Charity begins at home. Let's get our bottom line in the black, and then we can help other people. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Would anyone else like to speak against the rescission motion? Councillor, I've got hands up in the area everywhere. Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, if we were waiting to get out of our supposed $7.5 million debt before we could be charitable, we'd be waiting a very long time. I'll use the Harden Hawks as an example. This year, the major sponsor is the Carrington Hotel. It's been shut for 2.5 months with very little income. They've only been able to sell restaurant takeaway food. There's been no beer come out of a tap, which provides the main revenue for a pub like that in a small country town. So a sponsor of the Harden Hawks in their 100th year, they've been severely injured in their ability to provide that sponsorship, I believe, as an example. And the club's been suffering an inability to fundraise as well, which would normally happen on weekdays and weeknights there, where they'd be holding raffles and so forth. So there's a big picture here, and this is about providing a little bit of relief to those who have been affected under the coronavirus. The state government has not been able to provide a great deal of assistance to local governments to do this, but we can do this ourselves. And when we look at mental health and morale in these small country towns, we might be coming out of the other side now, but there's young men and women who want to get out there and play either league tag or rugby league or rugby union, and they want a club that they can go back to. And by providing this small amount of relief, I think it's a great gesture by council and one that we can afford in the long term.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. Someone likes to speak for the rescission motion? I know I've got a couple here. I'll speak for it. I was one of the 3 signatories on the rescission motion for the reason that Councillor Wallace alluded to when he commenced what he had to say in regard to the process. I think I said it on the night, the sentiment, and I'm sure we all share it, and would like to do our bit to help. But as has been said, it came from the floor with no idea of costings and no idea of funding at the time, albeit the sentiment was right. And I'd be happy under different circumstances to go along with that if we have the numbers provided and in front of me. But I can't, in all good faith, change my decision, because the rescission motion is very valid, that the way it was put was not the way to do it. Happy for it to come back again with the numbers and do that, and probably will find that I support it, but I couldn't support it in the manner in which it came to council the first time, which is just a matter of process, which I've been asked to ensure that we abide by, and hopefully we can continue to do so. So that's my take on it. If anyone else would like to speak against it, Councillor Tuckerman.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask whether the General Manager can provide the information to the meeting that he provided to councillors by email last night?
Thank you, Councillor Tuckerman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the information that I provided last night, just to explain why I did not add this information to the rescission motion, was the rescission motion as put to me at the time, which was the day after we did not have this information. The rescission motion that is signed and tabled did not have that information. So I chose to avail councillors of the information I provided last night through the email. I apologise for the lateness of it. However, that's when I got to the matter. To answer each point of Councillor Wallace's request, Councillor Wallace requested the General Manager to provide details to the May 2020 meeting as follows. Question number 1, the estimated revenue that will be lost as a result of the blanket application of the Resolution 2085 B and C. So this was our understanding of the motion as written. So total food and beverage inspections licences for the current years totals $11,215, which represents approximately 7 months of the inspections which have been held up due to COVID-19. This equates to an annual tally of approximately $19,225. An across-the-board extension of 6 months for all licence holders could be expected to be in the region of $9,600. The Sporting Association leases for the current year to date amount to $24,256 in revenue. On a pro rata basis, assuming 1/3, and it was just an indication, Councillor Wallace, I take on point the exact dates of which we closed down and opened. It's become clear that it would be a reduction of that time of non-availability. 1/3 of the financial has been lost to competitive sport due to COVID-19. Rebates would amount to $8,085 if item C was applied unilaterally. The second question posed by Councillor Wallace, seeking of information, what alternatives there are under existing officer delegations and council policies to assist in cases of financial hardship covered by the resolution and similar cases which the resolution does not cover. Financial hardship is governed by Hilltops Council's hardship policy. The two pertinent sections are payment arrangements, which allows us to enter into payment arrangements with the user or ratepayer, but still interest applies. The addendum that I issued last night was for 1st of July to the 31st of December. The Office of Local Government has deemed the interest rate applicable to outstanding debts to be 0. So there would be no interest lost in that regard, i.e. we can't charge it. And the write-off of accrued interest, that's on a case-by-case basis in relation to hardship. Given that the cost, this is the next question or seeking of information from Councillor Wallace. Given that the cost is proposed to be covered by borrowings, but this was not resolved, could the General Manager please advise Council the amount that will need to be borrowed to fund the resolution? If the above calculations which I've articulated, it would be some $17,685 for that purpose. Will the resolution be applied to all users of council facilities, even if they are not sporting clubs? This might sound bureaucratic, and I apologise for that. However, the resolution as it is written does not extend beyond sporting clubs. Will refunds be given to those organisations which have already paid? Will the resolution, as it relates to the licence fee, applies to all businesses which are subject to mandatory government shutdown or only cafes and restaurants? The resolution as written applies to the licence fees on food and beverage businesses within the Hilltops region. That is, this resolution would apply only to those businesses which have paid a licence fee or would pay a licence fee where such food and beverage inspections are undertaken. How long are these concessions to continue? My read of the resolution as it is written, it is stated actually within the motion, a 6-month extension of the licence fee period. I do note that inspections, if scheduled, would still be required on an annual basis in accordance with the governing health legislation. So we would be paying staff to go and do these inspections. However, we would not be charging for them during that 6-month extension. A blanket pro rata of fees for the inability to use sporting fields during the 2020 calendar year. That is the time frame as it is written. That is the information that I provided to you councillors are now provided publicly.
So we've had some debate and discussion about it, but after that, well, the General Manager, and thank you very much for that. Any questions? Or I see Councillor Armstrong has a comment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A couple of issues. First of all, I'd like Councillor Flannery to correct himself. Council hasn't borrowed a ZAC for the swimming pool, and to suggest that they have would be erroneous. So I'd like him to correct himself there. This particular motion relates to licence fees. I note under the Food Compact, the licence fee is actually paid to the state government rather than the council. I might need to be corrected on that. And in actual fact, it's the inspection fees that are paid to council and the local government under the accord. That being the case, it would appear under this motion that we'd be giving nothing back. The issue in regard to assisting businesses, I'm all for assisting businesses and helping them out. The issue of ratepayers, if the ratepayer is not the business operator, then the 0% interest on the rates, I guess that's going to come down to the individual arrangements for who's got to pay the rates between the landowner and the business operator. So that's probably a bit grey for us. When it comes to sporting clubs, the summer sporting clubs haven't been impacted substantially by COVID, so it's really only the winter sports. And I guess my question is to the General Manager in that regard. If a sporting club decides that they're not going to use a particular field this season, they wouldn't receive an account for that, would they?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I understand it is user pay, so if they do not use, they do not pay. Unless there's an agreement to have sole use of the field. I'm not aware of any individual agreements per se, but my understanding is it's a user pay scenario. So if they do not use, they do not pay.
So my next question goes to when are the accounts for the use of these fields sent? At the beginning of the season or at the end of the season?
I'll either need to take that on notice or pass to our finance team. Are you aware of that, Director Hughes, of when fees are issued? I think we'll need to take that on notice for the issuing of those accounts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Who else had their hand in the air? No one? Councillor Manchester's got his hand. Yep, Councillor.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Councillor Armstrong raised an important point there about the sporting users, and certainly I believe the summer sports, like I'll just use an example, say the cricket club and touch football, for instance, they're over and done with. They've had their season. The sponsors would have still been getting reasonable patronage from the public, and I don't believe they should be included. But certainly other sports clubs like the winter clubs, which have been, the rugby league, rugby union, soccer, AFL, and there'd be probably some others I haven't mentioned. They rely fairly heavily on businesses to sponsor them. These businesses, in 9 out of 10 cases, are probably the local pubs and clubs, which have been closed. And Councillor Stadman will raise that point with the Harden Hawks, and the young cherry pickers and the rugby Red Devils at Harden all rely on that sort of sponsorship. And I don't believe that if their sports gets going again this year, that then they can turn around, and when the pubs get operating or their sponsors get operating again, then it's not unexpected that they would receive a bill for the use of the oval, whether it be 6 months or whatever. The other point I'd like to point out is that with these ovals not being used, there is certainly a cost-saving factor to council that that they don't do a lot of the work. Some of the time they still have to mow the ovals and what have you, but a lot of the other work pertaining to getting the oval ready for the sporting events hasn't happened. So there is a further cost saving there to cancel. That's the way I believe it. The inspection fees for food people, it's exactly the same, and if the inspection hasn't happened, which I doubt whether has happened over the last 2 to 3 months, so there is a cost saving to cancel there. And I know that the fees charged to businesses for the inspection doesn't cover the full cost, but certainly it shows a goodwill, and I believe Councillor Flannery has hit the nail on the head there with that. And I believe that we should look closely. But it's not a lot of money, and if you take into account some of the savings that Council has also received, that work they wouldn't normally do, I think it is less than that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester, for your thoughts there. Okay, councillors, we'll just go with the process now then with this matter, and we'll put the rescission motion to councillors. All those in favour of the rescission motion, please raise your hand. Read the counting. Councillor Horton, Wallace, Ingram and Walker. Those against the rescission motion, Councillor Flannery, Armstrong, Manchester, Stadmiller, Tuckerman, Rolls and O'Connor. The rescission motion is lost. So that brings into account the original motion by Councillor Flannery. If that's happy to sit as it is with the councillor and with staff, happy for that to go ahead. If there needs to be some more detail around that for councillors to be happy with or fine-tuned on the commentary that went round tonight, happy for that to happen. But everyone, I think agrees the sentiment is there, is right. It just needs some fine-tuning around the edges. Would you like to make comment, General Manager, on that or not?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's a work through the process to ensure that we have the intent of the motion clear. So we'll present a paper to councillors to ensure that the intent of the motion, we can deliver on that for you.
Mr. Mayor, just following up on those the comments of Councillor Armstrong, and I do acknowledge in relation to the young pool, but we have borrowed money for a number of projects to get them finished in various towns. The intent was inspection fees, obviously, so picking up on Councillor Armstrong's point about licence fees versus inspection fees, and noting that the original motion was passed but sat in abeyance until the rescission motion was dealt with. Could we get clarification from the General Manager on whether that original motion, my understanding is it doesn't need to be re-put, but how the best way to deal with the intent of that original wording?
Under the Code of Meeting Practice, notwithstanding any procedural error or a lack of clarity, as long as we understand, and that is why I said to you that I would prepare a paper to send to all councillors to ensure the intent of the, as you said, licence fees versus inspection fees, the spirit and intent of the motion is upheld. So we can do that through the process of me just advising you, this is what we understand it to be, and we will pass that to you and seek your understanding of that intent. And that goes for any council law that voted against the motion. You can give comment upon that as well.
I've got a couple of hands in the air. Councillor Manchester was first.
Yes, it's just a question to Councillor Flannery, and I did raise it in my spiel a few minutes ago about he talks in his motion, he talked about virtually all sporting clubs. But as I said in my spiel, I don't believe that clubs that have finished their season should be eligible for for a refund or a reduction in the fees because they have already had their season under normal conditions. And I don't know whether he includes that, what it includes that in it. And as far as a question that the General Manager had about if people do use some of the facilities of the Shire, they haven't been able to, but they also probably don't pay a fee.
Can I just go through you, Mr. Mayor? You're unable to change the motion. What I talked about, the intent of the motion, the discrepancy between a description licence fees versus a description of inspection fees, that is a nuance of language, but the intent of the motion is still true. The motion as put and voted for and resolved at the last meeting and through the rescission being lost tonight stands. You cannot make that distinction. You cannot make that distinction now. We must apply to the resolution as written. So there may be a windfall gain for those sporting clubs whose season has come and gone. So that is the motion as put and approved.
Sorry, Councillor Wallace had his hand up. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've got great difficulty with this because what the General Manager has just said is that Councillor Flannery can't change what is in the motion, but at the last meeting he was able to make a motion from the floor, so I can't understand why he couldn't make one now that he wants to change whatever he wants. And with the same idea, I think if the report that the General Manager refers to doesn't look into all these matters, and I would like to see other users of council facilities a report on what their cost is for the time they haven't been able to use them, and all other businesses that are mandatorily shut down by government. I'd like to move a motion that all those report be provided as to how much that would cost council.
Okay, can I answer that in two parts? The reason in which it was moved from the floor from Councillor Flannery was the Mayor, in his discretion under the Code of Practice, accepted that it was urgent business and it was dealt with in this regard. For this motion to be changed, the Mayor can take it on notice as urgent business. However, I cannot see how it would be urgent business in the intent that it was last time, given that it has been now debated twice. The second point that you raise in relation to a notice of motion in relation to addition to the motion that has now been passed in relation to further donations or charity, for want of a better word, that would be a notice of motion that you can put to the next meeting, or you can request of the Mayor now that it is now urgent business, and then that debate can come to the floor. I'm in your hands, councillors.
Yeah, well, I'd like to move that it's an urgent matter. It needs to be discussed and part of the report that the council staff are going to provide. I mean, we've got councillors who've done, company directors courses on corporate governance, and we seem to be totally disregarding it. So let's break loose and just go for it.
Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, the Part C of the original motion was that pro rata all fees and charges for sporting clubs for the use of grounds for the 2020 season based upon the weeks available to them. So if a cricket club has had all weeks available to them, they don't get any pro rata rebate or reduction. If a football club gets 50% of the season and they were meant to be charged $1,000, they get charged $500. I think the motion is pretty clear.
I'll go back to process, we call that word. It's been voted on and dealt with in that manner, but Councillor Wallace has a point that he'd like to make, and I'd like to just clarify it properly before I go any further with it. With Councillor Wallace would like to move a motion now. If he could put some words to that for me so I can make a decision whether we go forward with that. Councillor Wallace, please.
That council provide a report to the next council meeting of the costs of providing relief for all users of council facilities who have been unable to use those facilities. That's A. And then B, the report is to address the possible financial assistance that can be given to all businesses have been mandatorily closed down as a result of COVID-19.
Thank you for that, Councillor.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Flannery.
You have to declare that it's urgent.
I will now declare that I will take that motion on board, given that and using the same sentiment as I did at the last council meeting for Councillor Flannery. So I'm quite happy for that to come to council. So I'll ask councillors to vote on that motion by Councillor Wallace that we just put up to come to the report to come to the next council meeting. All those in favour? Do a count. 1, 2, 3. Yep. Those against? Is Councillor Walker, Councillor Armstrong, and Councillor Stadmiller. Was that your hand in there? Thank you. Councillor Walker, Councillor Armstrong, and Councillor Stadmiller against. So that motion, recommendation for that motion has been passed. So that will come to our next council meeting. Thank you.
Just one point, Mr. Mayor. Actually, Councillor Flannery was right. I didn't look at Part C of his motion. I just looked across at it now, and he's quite right in saying it's a pro rata. So if the season has been completed, they've had 100% use, so they don't come into it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillors, on that note, brings us to the end of our council meeting. Cool. No, we've got no confidential tonight. So at 7:13, I will declare our meeting closed.